Dr. Jazz.
No, but I wanted to ask you, since you had like a one month tour, right? Or 3 week, even that's quite a lot by nowadays standards. How do you keep fresh
Yeah.
on a tour and like that feel, how to put it, creative every night? How do you do that over the years? I mean, have you done it?
Well, that's funny. My friend Bill Evans always talks about the fact that we get paid to travel.
Sure.
And we play the music for free. I mean, that I guess that's the point of it. That's would be the one element that kind of keeps you, sane, as well as other things. But I think also just it keeps you in a creative state. If we were traveling all the time without that, I couldn't do it. I don't think I could last any time at all. I mean, I think it's because it really is rough. It's a lot. I think people think it's a very glamorous thing, but man, I mean, when you wake up at 3:30 in the morning for a 4 o'clock lobby call, and you drive for 2 hours, and then you take 2 flights, and then you drive 2 more hours to get to the sound check. It's a lot. But that for me, that's the point. I think that is the thing that really rejuvenates, and I think it really, it's where the real spirit, the real spiritual part of the thing comes from. It's the only thing that's spiritual for me.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah, especially if you guys, usually when we do tours, I did one like a 3-week one last year, but we did like with a van, meaning the earliest we got up was like at 7. So, but if you do like a flight tour like you guys do it, that's really cruel. That's like Stockholm and Rome and like that's heavy. That's like
it can be a lot. Yeah. It definitely can. We it's great that you say that, because a lot of this tour we were actually able to do on ground, which
fantastic.
was so much easier. Yeah. I mean, it really, it was like a luxury, I mean, I think, and again, I think people think about flying as a very glamorous thing, flying all over Europe to do gigs, but man, it's exhausting. It's really a lot.
Yeah.
I'd rather have on my sweatpants and my sweatshirt and roll onto the bus and go to sleep. That's a lot easier.
Yeah, no. But I get you. Like it's the only fun part is, I mean, sometimes it's fun when you get to a town earlier and you can have a coffee or a beer or whatever. I love those moments. When you arrive to a place where you play at 1 and then it's like, oh, nice lunch in Ferrara or wherever you're gonna play. So that's the beautiful stuff.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm gonna get comfortable here. I think this thing will adjust to me. So
yeah, I think he's following you. So, but Tom, I wanted to, thanks for taking the time, first of all. But I've seen you live so many times, and I've have you on so many albums, and but like you wrote, funny enough, I also wanted to start with Stories, your latest one, and which is, man. That first tune, Hurry Up, the bass groove, and then it continues like those Don't Forget Your Jacket, the unisono with bass clarinet. I think it is like, it's just amazing compositions. Like, and first I want to start our talk like, how did you write the music, or how do you in general write music, especially let's say for this one, but in general, do you have like a routine? Do you write down chords or bass lines or?
This is really interesting, because I did this in a completely different way, actually. When I wrote in the past, I would do it kind of more in a traditional way. I would think of, I guess the concept could come from anywhere, as it did with this. A lot of times it would be maybe a chord, like a harmonic idea, some, group of chords, and then I would think, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. I think I can write something over, or, possibly a melody that just comes to mind or something that sticks in my head. And I think, yeah, I'll just, record that into my machine, and I'll listen back to it. And, if I forget, I can listen back and see if it sparks an idea, or possibly a rhythm, like you said. I mean, it can come from different places, but the interesting thing, normally, traditionally, when I would write something, I would take it from that, and I would kind of write like at least a part of a song, and like an A section, as we call them, just like maybe a piece of the song, but like a complete piece of the puzzle, and then I would go from there. This was completely different. I was sitting at home during the pandemic, and we were all told that you can't go out. We have to kind of isolate ourselves for our own safety. And I was in New York. I live in the city. And so we were really afraid, man. I mean, it really hit New York hard in the beginning. And so for a while, I was just kind of watching the news and driving myself crazy. And but I remember that I had started some ideas when I was doing a tour with Mike Stern in China, just before the pandemic. And I remembered that I had, put down some ideas with the computer. I work in Pro Tools all the time. That's my choice. And it's great because it has a grid mode where you can actually just punch in notes, which all of them do. But Pro Tools is actually the easiest one of all that I've tried. And so I was basically in a car going from one city to another city in China, and we had about a 2-hour drive. And I had this idea in my head, and I got my computer out. And I thought, you know what, I'll just punch in some notes, and I'll at least get like a drum groove, that I can work from, because I had this idea in my head, and maybe put down the bass part. And by the time we got to the next venue, I had most of the song done.
Wow.
And I had a demo, and it was in Pro Tools, and it was, and I was using Expand, which is the sound, the sound package that they have. So I had a Rhodes, I had a bass, I had drums, and I had a saxophone melody, and it was all there. And I started thinking, well, man, I've never been able to do it this quick, like from beginning to like finished demo. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start taking some of these ideas that I had, that I started over there, and just see what I can come up with.
Oh, fantastic.
And I guess it was about a month later, I had about 4 or 5 songs, done, or very close to being finished. And I thought, yeah, I think this works for me. I definitely, I don't think I would necessarily recommend it to anyone else as doing it in that way. But it really worked for me. And the cool thing about doing it that way also was that I could do it, I would go back and I would just play what I had, play the 8 bars, the 12 bars, or whatever I had finished. I would just play that, and I would let it play to the end, and then silence. And then I would roll it back, and I'd listen again. And pretty soon, you listen a few times, and then I would capture I would realize like another part that could go. That could follow that, And so I started kind of creating the music that way. Obviously you have to listen to the thing as a whole.
Sure.
And it's still it's still all about being musical. It is using your music, your ear, and because things can go really crazy doing it that way. And also, there's so many options. There's so many different ways you can go. If you decide that you want to just go a different way, I mean, there are a million different ways you can go from any point in a composition. So you have to, you obviously have to listen to it in a musical sense and say, okay, well, this makes sense. And, you know, I have to say, man, a lot of the times I would make weird choices and I'd go back and listen the next day. And I was like, oh my God, this makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back and, you know, maybe go a more traditional way to make it fit together, you know, but it's all stuff. The creative process doing it that way for me really works. You know, because I kind of like things. I'm a bit of a control freak, and I kind of like to have things exactly the way I like to have them, and definitely musically. And if I'm writing something, you know, if I'm composing something, then I want it to be, you know, what I'm feeling, and I want it to be exactly what I'm feeling. I want it to really represent what I'm doing, you know, or what I'm thinking about the music, or the attitude I have about a particular song or whatever. So this was a really great avenue, you know, a great way to do it. It was a great tool set that you know, really allowed me to write a lot of stuff. And, you know, then when I finished those ideas and I kind of had those down, then I started working on new stuff, you know, and I thought, man, I'll just throw a few ideas down here and there, and then I'll come back tomorrow and I'll see if any of them, if I can pick up any of them. So it was just kind of like piecing a puzzle together, you know. And,
no, but it's a good one, because if you rely on your ears, that's so important. You know, sometimes when you write on lead sheets, you know, you see, I don't know, a C Lydian, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is going there. It's so much about kind of theoretical in a way, but in this way, you were just like, okay, this sounds cool, I guess. I mean, that's a nice way to
well,
do
that's
it,
what I like. It kind of like worlds are colliding, because it's, you know, it's a, you know, it's definitely it's a different way of looking at it. And it's a more modern way of doing it, you know, doing it all over the computer, but it really does it really just does come down to what you hear, you know, which is why it ended up making sense, you know, after all was said and done. And, you know, it wasn't like I didn't have to move some things around, like I said, you know, to make certain parts of the song make sense. But, you know, then you know, if you could start to listen to pieces as a whole, you know, as a bigger piece, then it starts making sense, you know. And so it's a process. And I also, you know, think it takes a while. You know, it's not something you throw together unless you have a particular thing in mind, unless you know from beginning to end and you have it in your head and it makes sense, you know, then it's just a matter of putting it down. But if you're still creating in the middle of it, I mean, it takes as long as it takes.
Oh, sure.
And the nice thing was that I was really in no big hurry, you know, to finish the stuff. And so I could just kind of work on it, you know, and I ended up spending hours every day working on the stuff. But, you know, it's just, it really saved my life. It really did. And it also kind of like, it was sort of like, I was sort of reborn in a way musically from this, because it kind of put everything that I'd done up to this point in a perspective, you know, and it allowed me to sort of like, I don't know, kind of musically, you know, write my history, you know, and explain what I'm about, you know, and what I enjoy, you know, what I like to listen to. And you know, there's no better way to tell someone, you know, to explain what you like by showing them your own stuff, you know, in your own music and in your own way, you know. So really fascinating.
Are you still doing it like this? I mean, now in nowadays when you compose? Oh, wow, okay, fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. This is my way of doing it, and you know, I'm finding it. I didn't mention that I really enjoy doing it this way, and it's a lot less traditional, and there's something that's really fun about it. And also, you know, just the feeling that at any point, wherever I am in the song, I can go another way if I want to, you know. A lot of times if you have an idea from beginning to end and you're just jotting it down, it's already a song, it's already done, you know. And you wouldn't necessarily want to explore options at that point. You know, if something rings true as a song to you, then it is what it is. But you know, these things are just kind of like developing, so they can go wherever they want to go.
Yeah.
And some of them do. You know, I've made some pretty crazy left turns with some of them,
cool stuff,
and it worked out really well. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that actually to me kind of became the hook of the song, sort of like the part that you pick up, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So it was really exciting, man. Really
Did you
fun.
write out lead
Yeah,
sheets? Then in the end, you did
I'm
write out. You made lead sheets then in the end, right? Kind of that was
in the end,
okay.
yeah,
Wow,
in
that's
the end.
quite cool. Yeah.
Yeah, when I decided, you know, it was right and it was done and it made sense to me, you know. But the other thing was that, you know, a lot of this music, you know, for me, and I have another one coming out. Actually, I have another album coming out in a month,
Oh
and
man,
it was done.
fantastic.
Yeah, so it's a lot
Beautiful.
of the same people on the new album, and it's more of the same, you know. But it's they're really like they're songs, but they're actually, you know, they're from beginning to end. They're sort of, you know, very compositional. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's definitely like solo sections in these songs.
Structures. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of improvisation going on, but it's all kind of structured stuff. And it just kind of it kind of made sense as it went along, you know, because I didn't want it. I love open music. I love to be able to just play and improvise and go wherever you want to go with particular music. You know, this music just didn't lend as well to
Sure.
that. You know, it
Yeah.
sort of felt like it had to be kind of, you know, there had to be some control of where it was going and kind of, you know, dynamically and
Yeah.
kind of emotionally where the music was going to go from one point to the next.
No, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's really it's burning. It starts off like puff. Okay, damn, we're there.
Oh
Okay,
man, well, thanks.
let's go for the
Thanks, man.
ride. You know, it's like really okay. Fasten your
Well,
seatbelt.
thank you for saying that.
Really.
Thank you for saying that, because that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like you're going on a trip, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
like
it's
a
like that for
ride,
me. I was like, okay, shit, we're
like a
some
roller
serious
coaster,
stuff now.
maybe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did
Yeah,
you play this
cool.
music live
Okay.
with your own
We are
band?
playing it live.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. We so you know, Dave Weckl and I've been friends
Yeah.
for a million years since we were kids. And I had actually just recorded this stuff, and of course I had him play on the
Sure, yeah.
record. You know, I had him play on most of it. And he's also a great mixing engineer. So everything that all the records that I've done up to this point, all of my own solo records, I've mixed with him.
Oh, okay.
And so I brought this music, and you know, he was just, you know, he was impressed with the music and the you know, and we were sitting in the studio listening to the mixes, you know, mixing it and going through it, and he just kind of turns the thing off for a second. He goes, you know, it might be fun for us to consider doing like a band together, like a co-led group, you and me,
Okay.
you know, and we'll get a couple of guys and we'll go out and tour this music because it's great. You know, it's great music. It should be heard. You know, we should be out playing this stuff, which was a great thrill for me. And you know, it was definitely an affirmation too. You know, that it was the kind of stuff that I think people would enjoy. You know,
Yeah.
and so it was about it was almost 2 years ago that we toured the first time, and we did a couple of West Coast tours, and since then we've done 3 Europe tours,
Yeah.
and you know, including the one I just got back from, and it was really a lot of fun. Eric Marienthal was with us, played saxophone with us, and a great keyboard player named Stu Mindeman from Chicago, Illinois, played keyboards, and they're featured on the new record as well. You know, neither really didn't know Stu at all before I did the first record, and I had my old friend Jay Oliver on
Yeah,
that, and he
yeah.
played. Jay played on the entire record, and just tore it up. I mean, it's really ridiculous playing.
Yeah.
And it was great because he and I just got together for a week, and he just laid stuff down, and I sat there and listened to him do it, you know.
Yeah.
And it was really fun, you know. The three of us, like old brothers, you know. We all met. I think I met Jay when I was 13, and I met Dave when I was 15. You know,
Wow.
so you know, we're just kids, man. all from St. Louis, and all kind of went our separate ways. So it was really nice to get the three of us back together for the first record, and, to record that together.
Yeah,
it was really a blast.
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful. When did you start, like, seriously playing with Dave? It was like in the 90s, right? When he did one of his records, or was it even earlier? No, it was earlier, of course. Yeah, 80s, right?
Well,
90s.
we started playing together when we were kids, of course, and we played on various things on and off. And I think the first time that we really started playing, I guess after we were kids, was when he kind of started forming his band.
Yeah,
he formed his quartet.
Yep.
And Jake was on that.
Yeah.
And myself, and it was actually a quintet when it started. It was Buzzy Featon.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Was playing guitar.
Yeah.
And Brandon Field. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a burning one. Yeah.
On tenor and soprano, and that's kind of where it started. And I guess that's when we started playing more frequently, like on an ongoing basis, and it's kind of just gone on from there, and from there, Dave and I have played with Mike Stern quite a bit together, with Lee Ritenour, and different people. And now to have this band together is just really a dream. It's really, and I think I could speak for Dave too. It's so much fun, and it's so freeing, in a sense that it's just, it's our stuff, and we're just kind of, I mean, it's a real thrill for me to hear my music played by these guys.
Yeah.
And I said that was the if not as I think the most thrilling part was like finishing the music and being able to listen back to it as a finished thing, a finished product. And then my second most gratifying experience with it was hearing these guys play it.
Oh man.
So, and not only hearing them play it, but hearing them play it night after night, on this tour, doing a tour, and it's, and it evolves, and every time you play it, it's a little bit different, and you can feel it changing and moving and living and breathing as music does.
Yeah. Do you and Dave ever talk about, as a rhythm section, what to do, or like when playing this stuff, or playing with Mike or with Lee, or basically you just dive into it? Because you're probably one of the best, let's say, fusion or whatever we want to call it, rhythm sections out there. It's so tight, everything you do. Like, have you ever talked about how to approach something, or?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, a few words, it's more just feelings that we get on the bandstand. I can feel that he's kind of really, honing in on something I'm doing, and vice versa. If I feel like he has a definite idea, some kind of a definite musical idea, I will sometimes adapt my, what I'm doing so that we fit together better, or sometimes it's kind of cool when we go opposite ways, and it's whatever it brings to the music. I think a lot of it is unspoken stuff. And I think just because we know each other so well that a lot of it doesn't have to be verbalized. But yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely, like in a recording situation or something like that. Like I know with this music, and I was talking to him, I had I had programmed drums on all of my demo stuff, and obviously he will, 10 times out of 10, he'll come up with something better than what I have programmed, of course. But, there were specific things that I wanted to have in the music, and, and then we would talk about that, and then he would say, well, I know that you want that, but this would be kind of cool if I went this way. And, man, I mean, it's just a thing. I mean, but that's more rare, I would say, discussing it is kind of the rarity, You know, there really isn't much said.
Sure.
You know, but again, it's because, you know, it's what you're saying. When a rhythm section's been together that long, you know, like you don't have to verbalize things anymore a lot of times. You can give somebody a look and they get it, you know. And you know, all of us have given each other looks, you know, and you know, and through the years, and you just know what they're thinking, you know. And it's definitely like a sixth sense, and it's cool because, you know, I notice with different artists that we play with, it's a very cool thing. Like I see them watching, you know, and watching us connect in that way, and it's really fun.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
nice cool.
to hear
It makes it easy. It makes it easy for who we're playing with.
Oh man,
you know, because we're both, and we're both really, you know, you know, it's really important that we're honing in on the music first and foremost, and what's going on in that, and playing the right thing, you know, for what the music dictates, you know. So
beautiful. I also like it that you guys, that it's actually you, bass and drums now, band, you know, like Tom and Dave band. Like usually it's like, you know, a saxophone player with those guys, and now it's like you two in front. I love that. It's like, you know, playing your music. It's beautiful.
Well, thanks, man. You know, we us rhythm section guys need our you know, time in the sun too.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's funny. You know, it really is a different world. I'm just thinking about how many, you know, bass players and drummers are band leaders these days, and it's really changing. You know, it's you know, if you look at music 20 or 30 years ago, man, it was an entirely different thing.
Yeah,
you know, entirely different priorities as far as instruments go, and it's really changed a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Tom, you know, when I listened, you know, speaking of band leaders, I don't know, one of the earliest e-bass, of course, was Jaco for me, and
of course.
How was he important for you, or let's say, who was important for you when you were, you know, like a teenager, and you heard? Did you have like a epiphany moment when you heard like an album or like a concert, then you were like, okay, I want to do that? Or what happened with you, like going into jazz and improvisation? Actually, what was the moment? I mean,
well, it's funny because I started as an upright player. I played upright for 10 years before I ever touched electric.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had played. I played electric. I had a little fretless electric that I played for, you know, as my brother was learning to play piano. You know, like we play a little bit together in the very beginning, and then I just kind of didn't like the way the electric bass felt. I just, you know, I would sit on a chair and I'd play, and I was just kind of, that wasn't into it. You know, and I mean, you know, the time comes for everything, right? But you know, I didn't really dig it. But my brother was a tall kid, and he was, you know, he was Mr. Music. I mean, there's nothing that guy couldn't do musically. So he was in middle school, and he was a pianist. Everybody knew him as a piano player. And one time, the orchestra at the middle school was having a concert, like in 3 days, and the bass player fell sick. And so the director knew that if she gave my brother a bass, he could learn the stuff in 2 days.
Wow.
And he could, yeah, you know, one of those kind of people.
Wow.
And so she gave him the bass, and she said, listen, can you take this thing home and practice and play the show concert? And, you know, my brother said, sure, yeah, I'll do it. So he brought the bass home, and I came home from grade school, and I was in sixth grade, I guess, and came home, or fifth grade, and came home and walked in, and I saw this bass sitting there. And it was just like, whoa, that's cool. I'm looking at this thing for the longest time, man, kind of walking around. I was touching it, you know, kind of tapping on it, you know. And I remember that at one point I just finally got up the nerve, and I pulled one of the strings, and it was laying on its side, you know. And I remember I pulled the string, and it just went boom, like that, you know. And I think that was it for me.
Mm.
I think I was hooked from that point. I heard the tone of that thing, and that was it for me. You know, I really think that that's where it began. And I remember I picked it up and I tried to play some things on it, you know. And by the way, my brother went and played that concert 2 days later and played it perfectly.
Wow.
You know, so that's you know, that's a testament to my brother, who was an incredible musician.
Yeah.
But the so you know, I took to the upright really fast, and my brother knew it, and he talked the orchestra teacher into letting us keep the bass at the house for a while. And so he and I, you know, by that point, he was starting to listen to Oscar Peterson and Bill Evans and people like that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so we were listening to records all the time, you know, jazz records. My father had a record store. So we were listening to.
Wow, that's so cool. Wow, that's beautiful.
Which is very cool. I can't leave that out. And that's why we had a lot of records, and we had access to a lot of records. And you know, so we were listening to stuff all the time. And he said, let's go try to play like these guys. And he said, I'll show you a couple of things on the bass that you can play, and then we'll see, you know, we'll start playing together. So we did. We started playing together, and it wasn't long before we were, you know, not only playing together, but we were out playing gigs. And we were playing with, you know, people all around St. Louis, our hometown. And it wasn't long after that like, you know, James Moody and Sonny Stitt and people like that would come through town, you know, by themselves, and they would pick up bands locally wherever they went. And, you know, so we started playing with those guys, you know. We were committed, you know, we were really committed to it, man. And everybody knew we were serious. And, you know, and at that point, I mean, we were ready to play with those guys, you know, because we studied them. We knew all their stuff, you know. And, you know, I remember when Stitt came in, my brother was asking him about songs, and he said, my God, man, nobody's mentioned that song in 30 years, you know. How do you know that song? You're just a kid, you know. And because we were really into it, you know. And we were totally acoustic players, you know. Like if you had told me 2 years before I started playing electric that I was going to play electric, I would have told you were crazy, you know. I said, no way, man. I'm an upright guy. I'm really upright. You know? But I remember that. You know, a guy came into the store one time, and we sold guitars and basses, and, you know, we sold all kinds of things at the store. And a guy came in to try out a bass, and he starts funking on the bass. And I'd never seen that before. And man, I was just, you know, like I was just watching him, and he kept playing. Then he handed me the bass. I said, no, man, keep going, keep playing, you know. Like I was making him, you know, play it. He's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'll play it a little more. And he's doing, man, how do you do that, man? And he finally gives me the bass back, and he said, go out and buy a Larry Graham album, man. Go listen to Larry Graham. And I remember that was really the beginning of me playing electric bass. You know, that's where I really, you know, that's where it really kind of started, because that was something that I wouldn't normally do on the upright. So then I suddenly realized that there was actually a value to playing the electric bass. And so I wanted to play like this. I wanted to funk. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play funk bass, you know, and that kind of got me into electric bass. But to answer your question, I was going to say Brown was a real influence, was a huge influence for me on upright bass. Yeah. And around the time I started playing, Chick Corea's Light as a Feather album came out.
Oh man, oh yeah.
And I remember hearing that, and Stanley just blew me away, you know, like the technical possibilities on the bass.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
And it was just so smooth and beautiful the way he played, and it was so sustained, and it was, you know, and you start realizing that there's a lot of different ways you can approach this instrument. You know, it's not just about walking. You know, there's a lot of things you can do on the instrument. So he was huge, also as more of an upright influence. I would say Stanley for me was an upright influence. Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen was another one that that everybody knows. I mean, just incredible.
Yeah,
And I heard him with Oscar, and I actually heard him live with Oscar. It was just it was a duo concert.
Oh man,
it was unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Really unbelievable. And I met him after the show, and I remember talking to him about the bass, and let me play his bass, and he was really nice to me, and so that was very cool. So, and and there, of course, there are a lot of other upright players that came along later that, Scott LaFaro, I heard Scott LaFaro later on, was, he was, of course, an influence. But I would say those three guys on the electric bass or on the upright bass were my earliest ones. And then I heard, so anyway, I got into playing funk for a while on the bass, and I was really into Larry Graham and Louis Johnson and all those. Yeah, I love them. And then I heard Jean-Luc Ponty album with Ralph Armstrong, and Ralph Armstrong played a bass solo on it, and I thought, hey man, that kind of sounds like me. and I thought, it sounds like me, but he's playing it he's playing all my upright stuff on electric. So then I started thinking, well, I can do a lot of things I do on upright on electric. They don't have to be that different. I can incorporate a lot of upright stuff in the electric bass. So I started playing electric bass a lot more, and started kind of opening myself up to listening to other things. And, of course, when Jaco dropped, everybody had to have the Jaco album, and every bass player except me in St. Louis had the Jaco album. So pretty soon I heard, so pretty soon I heard about it, and I checked it out. Of course, I thought, this guy's really something, man. I mean, I dig it. It was funny for me though, because I was already listening to like Anthony Jackson and Ralph Armstrong and other people that were out there doing it. So for me, Jaco was another influence. But so many people's, and I completely understand that there were so many lives changed by Jaco's playing. For me, it was another influence. Another influence of several influences, But I mean, listen, man, the guy was incredible. Obviously,
sure.
And nobody needs me to say that, but he was, and he really did change bass playing. And I believe that Anthony Jackson changed bass playing.
Oh man, absolutely, absolutely.
And Stanley Clarke changed bass playing, and Scott LaFaro most certainly, changed the way bass was played, from all the greats like Ray and Mingus and all those guys, that were
all the guys you mentioned.
They revolutionized the instrument as well. So, that's kind of the way I always looked at it, and so anyway, I mean, to just, I guess to make the point is that there have been several influences, and some bigger than others. And for me, it was funny because I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, and I was talking to a student about this, and I said, the difference is it's the stuff that you actually use. It's the practical application of the influence, how it's going to affect what you're playing, and for me, like the guys like Anthony, for example, a lot of the influence the things that I got from him, I use to this day, and certainly Ray Brown, certainly Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen, and that's sort of why those guys kind of stay with me, because I use that stuff, and nobody comes up with their own stuff. There's nothing original, everything stems from something, so my feeling is that those are always going to be the people that stand out for me, because I think about them every time I play,
I'm happy you mentioned Anthony. I mean, I still think he's such an underrated player in a way, I mean, all the musicians know about him, but then, you know, he's a monster on that instrument. He's like, nice to hear that you mentioned him. I like that.
Well, he's, you know, the thing I love about Anthony is he's a bass player.
Yeah.
You know, and he's a self-proclaimed bass player. And you know, that was the other thing I was talking to my student about the other day. You're leading this thing very well, sir, because for me, that's the thing. It's what was our point? I just forgot it. I just
I just wanted to say how nice that you mentioned Anthony. You know that
Anthony. Yeah. Well, what
yeah.
I was going to say is the reason that hopefully you can edit this, but he's you know, he's a self-proclaimed bass player,
Yeah.
as am I. You know, I never think about, you know, the things that I learned to do. It's like the, you know, the bass player influences that I have are because they're things that I use. I also, the things I learned to play on the instrument are things that I use, you know, and I've always been that way. When I was a kid, I learned the stuff I was going to play.
Sure.
You know, I learned something to get me to point B, you know, to get me to the point where I was able to function, you know, on a particular song, or I was able to solo on a particular song. But I never just, none of it's gratuitous. None of it.
Yeah.
I don't believe in just doing it for calisthenics, you know, or doing it for weight training. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I take, you know, I always think about when I'm practicing, and I tell my students, you're practicing, you're playing. So never take that for granted. You know, when you're playing the instrument, you're playing the instrument. When your hands are on it,
yeah,
you're learning something, or something is happening. There's an energy there, and you should never take that for granted.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. That's what I love about him. You know, and you know, just to talk about Anthony, because there are a lot of a lot of players, of course, but you know, when you watch him play, he's in it.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
One of my favorite things I've just been watching lately was the Paul Simon, the Simon Garfunkel thing in the park.
Yeah.
And man, they keep showing Gad and Anthony back there, Richard B.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, it's insane. And him and Gad are just back there bouncing, you know, like.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Oh man, it's just, the energy is just unbelievable. And you can just feel the intensity of it, and it's just joyful, man. They're loving it, you know. They're just in it, and they're loving every second of it, you know. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's what it's about.
Yeah,
you know?
That's so important. Yeah, to have that on stage.
I think a lot of players, you know, there probably are a lot of, you know, players on all instruments that maybe aren't out there performing, you know. And in that case, man, you know, and I'm not trying to put anybody down for learning technical things or whatever. And I think you should always have fun with it. I think it really just depends on what your lifestyle is.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
What your musical lifestyle is. If you're out there playing all the time, or if you're doing it as a, you know, sort of a hobby, or you know, for what reason you're playing the instrument, I guess, you know.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Tom, I wanted to ask you also, like, you know, you're from St. Louis, but like in the 80s, you moved to New York, and I have you on so many records from mid 80s with some of my heroes, you know, like Bill Connors definitely pops to my mind. And, you know, Don Grolnick, I have to mention that, the one with Erskine and Michael Brecker, you know, these are like, how did you, when you came to New York, how did you start integrating with these people and started playing with all these different bands? And how was, especially, I mean, more questions within one, but how was it like for you playing with Mike also? I know you played with him a lot, with Brecker, and you know, and Don actually Grolnick as well. I mean,
yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. I can actually tie it all together because I met Peter Erskine when I was 12 years old.
Oh wow.
He was playing in Stan Kenton's band. He was 19. And we met, and they used to have, they had these summer jazz camps. And I was, the first year I was 12.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, it's 12. Because you were supposed to be 13 to get into the camp. And so I think this was the only time my mom ever told a fib, was to get me into the camp, and she's told him I was 13 and I was actually 12. But these camps were great because they would have like sectionals, rhythm sectionals, and then you would play with a big band. They had several big bands. It was kind of like being at North Texas State. They had the different bands that would rehearse during different times during the day and all that. But then they'd have a lot of open jam sessions too.
Oh well, okay.
And so those were in the evening, and I always went to everything because I was totally I couldn't miss out. And I remember Peter and I would end up playing a lot together.
Wow. Okay.
On those things, and or several times at least. And I remember, don't remember what the circumstances, but I think we even played a song together with the band, with Kenton's band, for some reason. I don't know what the circumstance was, but anyway, we knew each other, and we met there. And I remember there was kind of like just this little, connection that happened. And years later, I was, fast forward to just before I left for New York. And when, also to mention, when the Stan Kenton band used to come through St. Louis, my brother and I and a couple other guys would go meet the band at the hotel. And a lot of times they would have like a piano in the lobby of the hotel, and we would get together and play.
Oh wow. Beautiful.
So it was very cool. Back in those days, this was like, I feel like I'm talking about the 40s, like it feels like, me and Charlie Parker got together and played, but it felt like it was a totally different time. You wouldn't do that these days, but back in those days you could do those kind of things. And so anyway, just before I was getting ready to go to New York, Peter actually did a clinic in St. Louis and asked if I would play, if I'd play with him. And it's oddly enough, Jay Oliver was actually playing piano.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
So we did this little clinic thing, and Peter was doing like his drum thing, and it was a drum clinic, and we were playing together, and we were having a lot of fun. And I happened to mention to him that I was coming to New York, that I was going to be moving to New York soon. And he said, "Oh man, well, get in touch. Get in touch when you come up." And it was the same with Dave. Dave Weckl had been in Connecticut, and he was kind of going between Connecticut and New York, going to school, and then he was coming down to New York to play. And so those were two contacts I had, right away that I called when I got to New York. And the day I got there, I called both of them. And Dave told me, first of all, he said, "Oh, you know what? I'm starting to do these rehearsals with Bill Connors." And he said, "Bill wants to put this record together. So we're rehearsing this music." And he said, "We've had several bass players over." He said, "But I don't think, any of them are going to actually follow through with the recording or whatever." And he said, "Man, I'd love it if you come up and do a rehearsal." And I said, "Yeah, cool." I said, "All right." So he said, "Well, the next one is next Wednesday. So come, I'll tell Bill that you're coming, and come in and read the stuff, and we'll play together and just see how it all fits together." And then I called Peter, and Peter said, "Hey, just wanted to tell you that Eddie Gomez is leaving Steps Ahead."
Oh wow!
And
okay.
he said, "Your timing might be really good." He said, "Would you want to come and audition for the band?" And I said, "Yeah." And so this is like the first time in New York.
Man,
right?
That's crazy.
So, yeah. So it was timing. I mean, the timing was insane. But so anyway, Peter said, okay, well, why don't you come and audition like in 2 days? And he said, we have a new album out called Modern Times.
Yeah.
And he said, we're doing these 3 songs from that album now that we're actually starting to do on tour. So learn those. And he said, and then all the old stuff, because he and I had talked about, Steps Ahead at some point. And he said, Pools and all those tunes. So 2 days later, I'm at a rehearsal studio on 4th Avenue. And I don't even remember the name of the place, but I just remember sitting there and watching Mike Brecker walk through the door, and then watching, Mike Manieri walk in, and Bernhard, and, Peter comes, and everybody kind of sits down, and Mike's putting his horn together and blowing up and down the horn. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. It's nuts. And so they call Pools, They said, Pools, right? I said, yeah. He said, let's play Pools. And so we're playing, and and we get finished with the head, and I keep looking, and Mike's kind of checking me out while we're playing the head. He's kind of looking at me, and he's kind of nodding like that, And so Manieri starts playing his solo, and I'm hearing like, this guy live, and the vibes are right there, And man, he was just tearing it up. It was unbelievable. So then his solo ends, and then Mike gets up, and he literally stands right in front of me, with the bell like facing right into my face,
Wow.
And he starts playing, and it was just like, yeah, that's Mike Brecker. No doubt about that. That's Mike Brecker, And man, I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. Like by the time we were about 3/4 through the solo, he was like, just blazing, man. And Peter's over there just bashing, and everybody's smiling, everybody's smiling. It was like we were on a gig, and I had the biggest smile of anybody. And I'm just looking around like, oh my God, I don't believe what happened. And we finished the song, and everybody's like, yeah, cool, yeah, that was great, and then they kind of compose themselves, and then well, do you know this other song? Do you know this song from the new album? And I said, yeah, I love it, man. Let's play it. So we played it. And I guess we probably played like 3 or 4 tunes, and they were all just like, oh man, you sound great. Oh man, yeah, we've got a big problem here. And because it turns out that they had decided on another bass player.
Oh shit, okay.
Just before the audition, right? And so they said, oh man, we've got to talk this over. We've got to figure this out, And I remember and Peter told me, he said, yeah, we just basically told this other bass player they had the gig. And he said, but we'll talk, we'll see. He said, and so when I was going back to the apartment, I was really depressed, I was thinking, oh man, I just missed it, right? And I remember, I think it was either by the time I got back to the hotel, to the apartment, or the next morning when I was just getting up, the phone rang, and I picked it up. He goes, hey, Tom, it's Peter. Yeah, you got the gig.
Wow, beautiful.
And it was like, oh my God, So
that's crazy.
That happens. And then I go to Bill Connor's house like a day later and played with Bill and played with Dave. And Bill was like, when the rehearsal was over, he was like, well, would you be interested in playing on this album? Because, I really like the way this group works, and you and Dave play so great together. And he said, I like this, the way this trio feels. He said, I'd love for you to do the record if you want to do it, Wow. So it was really, it's all this at the very, it's a very long story, but it's
beautiful.
It's man, I mean, it really is like, you never know, you just never know when you put your hat in the pile, I mean, it's just as possible that you can go somewhere and nothing happens for a while.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah.
And you know, but it's like the timing of things, man. You never know. You know, I was incredibly lucky, but I will say, you know, along with being incredibly lucky, I was prepared.
Yeah, definitely. You know? That's what I wanted to say.
That would be the takeaway for me from the story, is that you know, and I always tell musicians that you've got to be ready for the thing that you're going after, you know, because you might get it, you know, and it could come up like that. It could come up right now, and you've got to be ready to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you learn the tunes and everything. Yeah, sure. I mean,
oh man,
yeah.
it was crazy. You know, and then it wasn't even a month after that, I got a call from Tanya Maria. You know, yeah, Dave Weckl's doing, you know, playing with me, and I'm playing at the Blue Note.
That's how you got the gig with her. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, well, she said, yeah, Dave mentioned you, and I've heard about you from some other people. And she said, you know, I'm doing a thing at the Blue Note in New York, you know, in a month, and you know, would you want to do the gig? You want to come to rehearsal? You know, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just like everything is just happening.
Yeah.
You know. It's crazy. It was crazy. It was really crazy, you know. So it was a very, you know, fortunate. It was a very lucky time to go to New York. You know, it was a good time, and you know, but I was also ready to do the gigs. Yeah. You know.
But you came to New York and basically started touring immediately, right? With Steps Ahead and Tanya and everyone, and
yeah, it was pretty
being
quick.
On the road and
Yeah, because I remember Steps was the first one that actually went. Bill Connors never toured. We did a couple of live gigs. We did a thing out in California, and I did 3 albums with him.
Yeah, it's a shame. He was such a. I mean, those records are really great. You know, the playing and the tunes. It's just such a shame that he hasn't. I don't know. Done more, or how should I put it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I think some people just don't enjoy being out, you know, and believe me, I understand that. The more I go out, the less I want to go out, you know. It's hard, you know, it's just tough. And but we did play in New York quite often. You know, we played at the Bottom Line there. We played, you know, a bunch of clubs in New York, and you know, and really got a lot of really good response. You know, I too that we could have gone out and toured that music.
Yeah,
because I think that would have. I think the world missed out on a lot of great performances. You know, with that stuff. And he is. I love his writing.
Yeah,
I love his, you know, harmonic sense. And you know, I just always, and he was, you know, he was actually, when I started writing my stuff, I thought about Bill a lot.
Oh, really?
You know, and yeah. Oh yeah, a lot of the harmonic stuff. I mean, and I didn't, you know, it wasn't necessarily that it was anything taken from his music, but just inspired. You know, the feeling that I had when I heard his music. You know, and when I do hear a track from one of those records every now and then, you know, I get a feeling, you know, in my heart, you know, and yeah, it's very moving. You know, his music is very moving. It's really. Grolnick was to finish the story.
Oh yeah, please, yeah.
I had just gotten the gig with Steps, and they had called me about getting ready to do a Europe tour, and I get a call from Don Grolnick, and he said, "Hey, Tom, I hear you got the gig with the Steps. Congratulations, man. Hey, I have one more song on this album, Hearts and Numbers, that I'm doing." And he said, "It's an upright thing," and he said, "You know, you're the man of the hour." He said, do you want to come and record the thing?" He said, "It'll be Peter and Chuck Loeb's playing on it, and Mike, of course, will be on it, and myself." And I said, "Yeah, you had me at, you know, would you play?" I said, you didn't have to say anything else. I said, I would be honored to play on the record, you know. And it was funny because about 3 months before I went to New York. Another funny story. I had been teaching at a university in Illinois, which is just across the river from St. Louis. And I used to go in 2 or 3 days a week. And I was an adjunct faculty there. And Grolnick came in to do a clinic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he came in and we ended up playing. We ended up playing for the clinic because I was the bass teacher there at that point. And the funniest thing, though, he walks in with this big bag, and we're all kind of looking at it. And he goes to the band, the jazz director. He walks up and he goes, "You're Brett, right?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm Brett." He goes, "Where am I supposed to do my laundry?" He said, "Somebody here said that I can do my laundry. I've been on the road out here. I've been out for like about 3 months now, and I need to do my laundry. And somebody said I could do it." And it was so funny. And he was so adamant about, "I need to do this. This is what's important to me right now, my laundry." And you would never understand that unless you'd been on the road, because back in those days you were out for months.
Yeah.
And I think he was out with James Taylor, and then he was doing some other things, and maybe Carly Simon, I don't remember, but he was just the guy. He was playing with everybody, and he was out there all the time. And laundry becomes a really important thing.
Oh man, sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, even more important than it is normally.
Yeah, definitely.
But those kind of stories, man, I just, you just have those floating in your mind all the time. It's like, I remember that story like it happened yesterday, and I think of it often, because how extraordinary was he?
Man, such a composer, man, and a player, obviously, but I love his tunes, what he wrote, man, beautiful.
Oh my God, just beautiful stuff. Yeah. Remember the song I got to play on was just gorgeous. Oh my God, and Mike was playing the melody, and it was just like, oh my God, and I get paid to do this, I mean, I can't believe I'm actually getting paid to play this beautiful stuff. Amazing,
Yeah.
Really incredible.
That's so beautiful. I just wanted to ask you about touring. Were those first tours that you did, or the first one with Steps Ahead, something like you imagined, when going on the road for the first time with those guys for weeks, probably? How was that experience like? I mean, Europe especially.
Well, I was the kid. I mean, I was the new guy, and I was quite a bit younger. And I think everybody had their own thing they were doing. I think they had their routines. And so we were all pretty much kind of on our own.
Okay.
And I remember, I remember not seeing them much, and we would meet in the lobby to go do things, to go to the sound check and to go to the show and all that. And then we'd meet in the lobby to leave and fly wherever we were going. And we were together for all that stuff. And then everybody would just disperse, and I kind of figured that was just the way it was. And I also, I mean, I'd been on a few tours before, but not at that level. And so I didn't really know what to expect. So I just assumed, okay, well, I guess this is sort of the way it is.
Yeah.
Everybody's just, and I remember I got a knock at my hotel door one day, and I opened the door, and here's Mike Brecker standing there. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh man, nothing." He said, "Let's go have lunch." And we went and had lunch in the hotel, and I'll never forget that. He reached out, and I remember too that when I got back, I said, "Hey man," I said, I wouldn't waste your time. I said, "But I would love for you to hear something." And at the time, my brother was, kind of between St. Louis and New York, because he had a girlfriend back in St. Louis that he was visiting. So he would go back and forth. And he was playing with his band in St. Louis. And they're really great musicians. And he was incredible. I mean, he was just I don't know if you know anything about Ray, but he was,
Yeah,
he was
listen, yeah, sure. Yep.
unbelievable. And I said, Mike, I said, this is my brother. I said, I just want, or I didn't tell him it was my brother. I said, I just want you to hear this piano player, hear this keyboard player play. And I played the tape for him. I had like an old boom box with a big speaker in it. And I said, and he said, oh, sure, I'll listen to it. And so I played it. He goes, who is that, man? He said, who is it? And I said, oh, that's my brother. And he said, no. He said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, yeah, that's my brother. He said, play it again. And I played it for him again. And then he said, play it again. And I played it for him like 3 times. And the thing was like, the solo was like 7 or 8 minutes long. You know, like he was going crazy, you know. And Mike was listening to it, and he kind of, at the end, he kind of sat there and he said, yeah, okay, yeah. All right, man, I'll see you later, you know. And he walked out, and then like a few days later, he showed up at my room again. He said, play me that thing again. And I think what was happening, I think he was memorizing. I think he was, I think he was hearing some of the stuff, and he was he was putting it together, you know. And I really think that's what was going on. And he, but he always, man, he was such a sweetheart, and he always, you know, he always had like these great words to say about my brother, you know. And I remember, you know, we got together one other time and had lunch together, and it was like a big brother bashing session, you know. He said, yeah, Randy's, you know, he said, Randy's my big brother, obviously. So I've got, you know, when you work with your brother, there's always problems, you know, and there's always things that, you know, and we talked about our big brothers. It was hilarious.
That's so beautiful.
You know? Wow. But what a sweet guy, man. I mean, it was really something, you know, just to reach out like that. He definitely didn't have to. Yeah. I think he felt, I think he kind of could feel too that I was lonely, you know, and just kind of feeling out, you know. And it was just the sweetest thing, man. I'll never forget that. And to me, man, that says as much as the playing.
The playing, sure, yeah.
It really does, you know.
Definitely.
And you meet, and so many of them are really special people, you know. I've just recently played with Mike Minieri again with this iteration of Steps Ahead. We did a week at WDR in Germany.
Oh, really? Germany, oh, wow, beautiful.
Doing the big band, and man, I got to hang out with him a couple of times, and just the same thing, just the sweetest guy. And he said, I don't really remember us being, hanging out there at all, during the band days. And I said, yeah, we didn't. So we didn't. I said, everybody had their thing, everybody was doing their thing. And he said, I remember he said to me, he said, man, I'm sorry that I was, that way back. He said, I think I was so busy with writing and doing my thing.
Played with everyone, and everything.
Yeah, he said, I don't think I was very social at all, with anybody in the band. He said, but you were the kid, and it was just very sweet, and Peter's always been very sweet. Sure. Through the years we've played, little things here and there, and he's good. They're just all good people.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
And that's as important to me as anything else.
Oh man, that's that's even more important, maybe, when you're on the road, just and stuff like that. But
definitely when you're living with people, that's for sure.
Oh man,
for sure.
Yeah. Tom, not to take too much of your time, I just wanted to ask you 2 more things. Like, one is
sure.
Like, how are you dealing with, let's say Planet X situation and playing? I just wanted to ask you, with those heavy stuff, that's like so
I need a drink.
Exactly. How do you cope when you get a lead sheet or like something like that in 17 x 11 -6 meter and still feel comfortable? When I hear that stuff, it sounds effortless. Like, how do you deal with that, actually?
Well, it was funny because when Derek Sherinian actually I knew Virgil, and then Derek Derek, I knew Virgil, I guess, through Dave. And I had met Virgil a couple of times, I think, because, you know, Dave, our band did some drum festivals, and I think I ran into Virgil there. And I remember Derek Sharinian contacted me, or maybe it was Virgil first, but Derek contacted me and he said, yeah, man, we'd love for you to play on this record, you know, that we're doing, Planet X record. And he said, you know, it'd be cool if you're going to be, you know, driving by this neighborhood, could you maybe stop by and pick up the CD of the music? And that way you can listen to the demos, you know, and listen to what we have down so far. And so I went by, and, you know, there were no charts or anything, but he just gave me the CD. It had some scribbling on it, you know, and he said, yeah, check it out. And he said, man, if you have any questions, you know, call me. And, you know, really nice cat, man. And you know, I got a really good vibe from him. And I put it in, and I, you know, put it in my CD player in the car, and I'm driving away from his house. And I thought, wait a minute, there's something wrong with the CD. You know, like the CD keeps skipping, right? Because it was just like, everything was just like this, you know? And I was thinking, oh man, what did I do? You know? And I sort of already said I would do it, you know? And it was kind of like, oh my God, you know, really? And I thought, you know, this, I don't think this thing is playing right. And so I got home and I put it in my CD player at home, and it was the same. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like, you know, and the first thing I was listening to was going between 19 and 2116, you know, and it was just like, oh my God. So actually what I did is I made myself listen to it over and over and over. First of all, that was the first thing, that was the first way to begin to crack the code, you know, to crack Enigma, you know. It was just like, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do here? And so I just listened to it. I kept listening to it. Then I started realizing that I was tapping a certain way when I was listening to it. And I realized that I was tapping in 4. And I was tapping in, you know, against certain things and on certain things, but I was staying in a pulse. That's how I did it. That's really the simple way, you know, to explain it, is everything is in 4.
4, yeah, sure, yeah, basically, yeah.
But if you can figure that out, but man, it took a while, you know, to try to figure that out. And you know, it was also, you know, the lines were so odd that you know, I'd be the first one to admit that I punched a lot of that, you know, on the record, because it was just. The other thing is that we didn't have a lot of time to put it together. I think they had everything down and they wanted to put bass on it, so they were waiting to have somebody come in and play. Yeah. And so there wasn't a lot of time, you know. It wasn't in the beginning stages, so I didn't have a lot of time to really deal with it. And so I just told them, you know, when I went in, I said, listen, I can't play this stuff all the way through. I said, I'll play it in sections and we'll punch, you know. And that's what we did.
Oh, wow, okay. You would not hear it.
If we had, you know, a lot of it was sections, you know, like I played the actual sections, but we punch in and but you know, had I had more time to like really deal with it, you know, I would have learned it. And ultimately we did play a few live gigs.
Oh wow, okay.
And I remember the first gig we played, you know, because Virgil used to cut everything off in 4, you know. And so I remember it was so weird. It was so surreal. Like the first gig and the first song we played was like one of these ridiculous 2116 things. And I remember for just a split second when he called it 1, 2, 3, 4, I expected him to start playing in 4, you know? And all of a sudden the song started. I'm like, oh geez, you know? And I kind of had to jump into it like really quick, you know? Because it was just crazy though. It was really just like in a dream, you know? It's like this dream, and you're like, I need to wake up from this dream, you know, like yeah, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know, you know, what to do. It was really,
man, it's
it was
hilarious.
really crazy. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it really is just figuring out
How to feel it, and yeah.
yeah, it's more just about what your body tells you, you know, because like I say, I was just sitting there and I would notice that I was tapping and I feel my body moving a certain way against the music.
Yeah.
And I started realizing, yeah, I think I can actually cope with this if I can just keep this motion happening.
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
important. Yeah.
And so when we played live, man, everybody else is, you know, doing whatever they're doing, and I've got this fourth thing going on my foot and just playing all this crazy stuff. It's like,
Oh man,
well, it works.
it works.
You know?
Yeah, whatever.
It
Yeah.
works. Yeah, what are you
That's
gonna
beautiful.
do? Yeah, yeah,
That's beautiful. Oh,
yeah. You got to do
fantastic,
anything
man.
you can, man. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Beautiful.
But
Well,
actually, that's the most organic way to do it, I think.
yeah,
You know.
yeah,
But and I have to say, man, I you know, talking about those guys, I mean, and Tony McAlpine was playing guitar,
yeah. Sure.
incredible.
Yeah, man,
And
monster player. Yeah.
yeah, just ridiculous, man. And he was an incredible classical pianist.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a very soulful guy, and it's funny because the one thing that I really was so happy to take away from that music was that it's music and it is beautiful.
Mhm.
It's something, it's an acquired thing, you know. It's like you have to really live with it. And you know, once I internalized it,
That's
and I
easy.
think with my internal clock, you know, along with that came like this internal understanding of where, you know, where the music was coming from emotionally. And man, it does get into you, you know. And it was a really good lesson for me, you know, because you know, I still to this day I record for a lot of people,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know, and I do a lot of various, you know, kinds of tracks for people. And some things when I listen to them in the beginning, I'm thinking, nah, I don't think so. But you know, I always like listen to it over and over and over, and I try to get it inside of me to see if it's something that it's, you know, maybe for some reason I'm just not comfortable with it, or it's just
Yeah.
something that I'm not used to, you know, that I'm not used to dealing with.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, and that really helps me, and it really helps me appreciate music that maybe I don't understand initially.
Yeah.
You know, so that's been a really good lesson.
Can imagine. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
What's still on the schedule for you for this year? I mean, do you still have some tours coming up for European or recordings? And I mean, what's happening for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, the recording stuff goes on, you know, and I'm actively working on new music. You know, I haven't had enough yet. So you know, I have this new album coming out, but I'm trying to stay one album ahead.
Yeah, it's
You
beautiful.
know,
Yeah.
so the new album is called New Start, and that will come out. I think I'm trying to get it out by next month. I'm just doing some artwork changes on it, but that should come out next month. And like I said, it's more of the same. The guy I mentioned, the keyboard player Stu, is playing on all of this album. He's the guy that's playing the music live.
Right, yeah.
So really great. It's so we're kind of, you know, Dave, he and I are the nucleus, you know, the rhythm section, and you know, Eric is playing on some things, and Randy Brecker's on it, and Bill Evans plays on it. It's I'm really proud of it, and I think it's, for me, when I compare it with the other album, it feels like I've grown a little bit, you know, which is cool. I may be the only one that detects that, but you know, it's a nice feeling, you know, because you feel like it is kind of, you know, it does have a life of its own. It's moving forward all the time. So the idea is to write even more, you know, and have some new things to play next, you know, touring next year. We're possibly going to China to do some dates later this year. Nice. And and then we're talking about trying to do an East Coast tour. And, you know, I'm sure that we'll probably gear up and do another Europe thing, you know, next year, same time, probably in the spring.
Wow,
and I'm pretty much just trying to, and it's by choice. I just kind of feel like I just want to do this, you know, as far as like getting out and playing live. I mean, I really, you know, it's really changed my life.
Sure.
You know, and it's really, you know, it's not that I wouldn't enjoy going out and playing for someone else or doing someone else's music, but I think this really changed me over the last 2 or 3 years, you know, and I like that. I like the way it feels, you know, and I think there are other ways to do things that are maybe a little more gratifying to me, you know, as I said, like, you know, we're writing at home.
That's so important too.
Recording and recording, you know, other people's music, and as I said, you know, this whole process of kind of learning how to negotiate, you know, different music and different sensibilities. Like, that's really interesting to me, you know, and I felt like over the last 2 or 3 years, I've really grown a lot, you know, and I see things a lot different than I did before, which is, you know, it's a great testament to us, you know, forever, you know, evolving and you know, moving forward. You never stop that, you know. I really thought at my age, like, I was just going to be doing this until I didn't do it anymore, you know, and now this came along and kind of changed everything. So it's exciting, you know, and I think musicians should look for that. I think they should look for ways to you know, change or to evolve, you know. I think it's so easy to fall into a pattern, and it's so much more gratifying to me since I've found this thing. So, you know, for now, I'm just going to say that I'm touring my music, and
that's beautiful.
I'm really happy doing it, and I want to try to do it as many places as possible. And, you know, we're always looking at possibilities and, you know, of possible places to tour and all that. And I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna enjoy that.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna ride that roller coaster.
Yeah. It's like I said, buckle up. It's a nice ride, you know, for everyone, I think, who hear the album. It's really beautiful. So.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
So.
I appreciate you listening to it.
No, man, it's, you know, really
I appreciate it.
Burning. So, Tom, cool.
Thank you.
I will leave you a nice, I think you have an afternoon there or evening slowly. So, but thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it and sharing some of these thoughts. So, really nice.
Of course, man. Thank you. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it. I'm honored.
Thank you. And I hope to see you in Europe. Next time I see you, I'll pull you by your shirt. So.
Absolutely, man. I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. We'll get a visit in next time.
Cool. Cool. Thank you.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye. You too. Ciao.
Thank
you.
you.